Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 104.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm glad that you are here, tuned in one more time. What we're going to talk about today is, well, cash flow. But you knew that because it's the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm Jay Massey, your host, and I am so glad that you choose to invest your precious moments here with us. Again, remember the concept, return on time. And we hope that the time that you get listening to us definitely produces a very, very significant return. I think you're going to be interested today to hear that, it doesn't really matter how young, how old, how whatever you are. It doesn't matter what it is that you're looking to do. You can only be limited by your thinking. And we have today an individual who has managed in a very, very, very short period of time to control over $7 million, hear the number, $7 million worth of real estate, and he uses apartment buildings. And you guess what? I'm not talking about me. So, you are not interviewing me today. We are interviewing Mr. Joe Fairless. He also has a podcast out there, and he does things completely differently than I do. So this is going to be awesome to understand him and talk about it, because he started investing in single family homes, but we all did that, right? But he did started in 2009, and he was working as an ad man in New York. And that I find interesting first. And I need to get myself over to New York someday. But he made the switch to apartments because he realized he could achieve his financial goals faster because he could buy more homes at once. And that's homes in quotation marks if you think about it. And we all know that I agree. And what's interesting is that he was able to close on a 168 unit apartment community worth over $6.7 million in July of 2013. And he did it by raising the capital, a man after my own heart. Please help me welcome Mr. Joe Fairless. Joe, you there?
I am here. What a wonderful introduction. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks a lot, Jay.
I am glad that you are here. I've never been to New York. I hear that they got good food.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so what's the favorite restaurant? Where do we need to go to eat? Where's the good food at?
Oh, well, interestingly enough, I eat most of my meals at Subway restaurant. But I would say my favorite bar is called Common Ground. It's on 13th Street, Avenue A, and they have the best chicken quesadillas you'll ever eat.
Got it. There it is. Now, man, you about hurt me right there. I'm like, I can go to Subway in California, and you're telling me, I'm like, what?
I know. I'm not the best person to ask about that because I always eat plain Jane stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. I too am that person who if it wasn't necessary to live, I probably wouldn't eat. Whereas my wife, it's an experience with every meal. So I totally understand.
Yep, I'm the same way. Yeah, it's there just because I have to.
Got it. So let's get down to business here. When it comes to, cash flow and entrepreneurship, one of the things that I like to look at and think about is the fact that I look at today's entrepreneurs. Today's entrepreneurs, as we all know, in my opinion, are like yesterday's superheroes. We put on capes, we put on tights, possibly have a mask, and we go around saving people. But we all started somewhere else. We all started from a different beginning than who people see us as today when we're out there wearing our superhero uniform. So what I want to know is I want to know about the Joe that was working at the ad agency. I want to know about the Joe that decided one day and just woke up and said, you know what, enough of this and I've got to move to something else. Who is Joe Fairless?
Well, I would say I've always been competitively driven. I graduated from Texas Tech in 2005. I I had only been to New York City once, and that was whenever I was really young, like 11 or 12 years old, because my one of my brothers, he graduated from West Point, and he's a
Mm.
lieutenant colonel in the Army now. And so I'd been up to West Point, New York, which is pretty close to New York City, a long time ago, and I was terrified by it. And I never, ever, ever wanted to live in New York City until I determined that advertising was going to be my major. And the only reason I moved to New York City is because I wanted to compete with the best of the best. My plan was to move up to New York, spend about 5 years in New York City working in ad agencies, and then move back down to Texas, where I'm from. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, and have my resume be at the top of the pile, and move my career along that way. So everything that that I do is really previously it was my competitive spirit and competing with others. Now that has evolved. The more personal development stuff I read, and the more I get into that, it's I'm competing against myself, and I'm being the best that I can be. And I don't necessarily worry about what others are doing competitively. I'm more focused on myself. So I would say, it's really about doing the best that I can do personally, and then setting big time, crazy, ridiculous goals, and just figuring out how the heck I can achieve those goals.
Got it. I like the big time, crazy, ridiculous goals. We'll talk about that in a second. But this idea of competing with the best of the best, I mean, we've all heard it said, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Are you saying that's true?
Well, I mean, I would say there's for advertising in particular, there's a perception that the best of the best work in New York City, in advertising. And whether that perception is correct or not, because I haven't worked in other cities, I know that there's that perception. And a lot of the time, perception tends to be what people perceive to be the truth. So it really doesn't matter what the truth is. It's all about perception. And I do know that it is certainly competitive in New York City. And I'm surrounded by a lot of talented people, and that actually helped me get investors for the deal that you mentioned, just through the advertising experiences and the people that I met who were doing well here and wanted to diversify their portfolio.
Okay, so let's talk about that. One day you're out there, you're looking at it, you're designing, billboards, movie posters, coming up with catchy slogans, staying up late at night and eating bad food at Subway. And then the next night you just go, you know what? I want some real estate. What on earth inspired that transition?
Yeah, well, I remember well, if anyone knows the advertising industry, you'll know that you don't make any money when you're starting out. And in fact, it's pretty much below minimum wage when you factor in all the hours that you're working, which you alluded to. And living in New York City, that was even harder, challenge, because the cost of living is a lot higher than other cities. So I had to, and I didn't have any money coming out of college, so I had to wait and save up money. Once I had $1,000, I didn't know what the heck to do with it. So I went to my bank, and I saw something called a CD. I'd never heard of it, didn't know what the heck it was, and there it was. I think it was like 1.5% interest for a 12-month CD, and I was like, well, that's more than I'm making my savings account now. So I guess I'll do that. After they held my money hostage for 12 months, 12 very, very, very long months, is my only $1,000. I got a check in the mail for, I think, $18. And then I got taxes taken out of that whenever the taxes came. I was like, there. I remember standing on the street corner in New York City, and the world was just like slow motion, and I was like doing a 360, just turning around like you'd see in a movie. I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I read. My sister's a real estate agent in Texas, and she sent me Rich Dad Poor Dad. Read that book, ate it up, and then I just kept reading more and more. I didn't have enough money at the time to invest in real estate, but I saved up, ended up saving up enough money for my first single family home. And I ended up buying 4 single-family homes. At that point in time, I was like, all right, I like this real estate thing. I was also teaching classes on the side in New York City, teaching people how to invest in cash flowing properties, living in New York City, but investing in markets where the numbers make sense. Um, and I saw that the opportunity was to, one, do something that I cared more about, and then two, do something that generated wealth for me versus my employer. And that's whenever I started looking at apartments, because as you mentioned in the intro, it's you can buy 4 homes separately, or you can buy quote unquote 4 homes in one purchase if it's a fourplex. That's what really got me intrigued about the scalability of apartments. And I ended up working at an ad agency. I was the youngest vice president of an ad agency up here that's really well known. And I realized, I was like, this just, I don't want to do what my boss is doing. This just isn't for me anymore. So I left. I left in December of 2012, and I actually didn't think I was going to do apartments full time. I thought I was going to be a career coach, and I thought I would do apartments on the side. But once I left, I was like, oh, wait a second. I can't get approved for a mortgage anymore. Um, so now I have to bring in investors, which completely flipped the business model, and actually created a business. And that's where I started speaking with investors, and the career coach thing. My business model, and I use that term very loosely because there wasn't one, was to consult college students and young professionals in the marketing and advertising industry to help them get promoted faster, because I was promoted very quickly relative to my age and the amount of experience that I had. And what I failed to realize in that business model, quote unquote, was that college students who are majoring in advertising going into the industry can't pay for a consultant.
No.
So I quickly that business quickly flopped, and I transitioned into apartment investing full time. And fortunately, it worked out really well.
Got it. Got it. So there are so many things in there that I want to pick on. The first, I think, which was great, and I love how you phrased it, is that we could probably write a book called The Longest 12 Months of Your Life, when you were holding on to that CD, wondering, and then especially when you realize that what 1.5% was, and it speaks to the idea that financial education is missing. And you went to college, you went to high school, but yet something as simple and or basic as what's a CD was still foreign to you.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what to do with my money.
Yeah. So we invest all this significant time in learning how to go, create value in the marketplace, or at least get a job. And then we end up with the cash, but we don't know what to do with it. So what was in the Rich Dad book that gave you the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to go buy a house?
I think it was the case studies, and I think it was just the psychology behind the fundamentals of real estate and cash flow, and the different shift in mindset of what an asset and what a liability is, because I think the main takeaway that I got from it was it's possible. It's possible to do this. The book makes it very simple to follow, and I came away thinking, okay, I know that it's possible. Now I need to have some money in order to act on it, and those were my next steps. I saved up money for I think 4 years before I actually could purchase my first house.
Got it. So now, and during that period, when at that 4-year mark, when you were ready to write the offer, how did you deal? Because I get this a lot, especially for the people that I work with. They're like, you know what, Jay, I just can't bring myself to write that first offer. It's very, I'm like, well, why not? They're like, I don't know. I just can't do it. Why didn't you get stuck there?
That's not my mentality for whatever. I'm just not wired that way. If something makes sense, if I'm educated enough so that the numbers make sense to me, and I've done the due diligence that I know of, and I also have people who have experience in doing what I'm doing, and they say, "Yeah, this looks pretty good. I'm going to do it." Um, it's I've always been a trigger puller if something makes sense for me. I certainly won't hesitate, but it has to. There's a lot of stuff boiling, leading up to that point that that helps me arrive at that, pulling the trigger moment.
Yep. Agreed. So in the process of going through, leading up to that trigger point moment, actually doing it, I'm kind of curious if you can timeline this for me. You said it took about 4 years to get the first one. After that first one, how long did it take you to get numbers 2, 3, and 4?
Let's see. 2009, I bought my first place. It's interestingly, I was approved for a mortgage in January, and I was ready to rock. Like I was ready to go. Let's make this happen. I didn't purchase my first house until October. It took me 10 months to purchase the first house, and in between those 10 months, I lost earnest money through my mistake and my broker's mistake. And that there were some major learning moments between those 10 months. So even though I was ready and raring to go, it took me almost a year to finally close on my first place. After I closed on my first place, I purchased my next place 2 years later, and then the next one a year later, and then the next one like 3 months after that, I believe.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought. I had a feeling it was going to be something like that, to where, and I find it interesting because you bring up a topic of losing earnest money. That's definitely something that people are afraid of. What happened? How did that happen? And how did you decide to keep going? Because sometimes when we make a mistake, we turn around and go home.
And that's a significant chunk. I think it was, I want to say it was $1,000. And whenever you have $15,000 to $20,000 total to invest, I mean, that's a large percentage of the amount of money that you've got for a place. We lost earnest money because it was definitely on us, because earnest money should not ever, ever, ever be lost. Now I know this, but we lost it because there's some sort of financing contingency that wasn't in place, and it was taking longer to get financing. It's actually a little fuzzy to me exactly why I lost it. I just know the takeaway is that it will never be lost again, because the contract is going to be reviewed by an attorney and team members that I have, and it won't happen.
Got it.
But it's as far as keep on going, it's for me, it's just a matter of whatever. I mean, that happens. What can I learn from it, and how can I apply that to the next opportunity, so that the next opportunity is bulletproof, and I take those learnings and keep in my back pocket for anything else that comes up.
Agreed. As I've said before, you do your first deals for experience, not profit, and then later you get to profit from your experience, which clearly you've done, because I like to just want to point out the fact that it went from 4 years down to 2 years, down to 1 year, then to 3 months, and now I've got to ask, how long after that fourth house before you got the apartment building?
Let's see. I think it was 2 years.
Got it.
Maybe a little bit less.
So you went from 4 to 168.
I guess so. Yeah.
That's some growth rate. I mean, even on Wall Street, they're hoping for those kinds of numbers. So what gave you the courage to actually write that unit and learn to go out there to, syndicate deals, or, there are many terms for it, but what gave you the courage to go, you know what? I can be the person who can go out there and ask people for their money and then buy a building that's larger than anything I had thought of before.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's about um, knowing that it's first off it's possible, but two, having the right team members in place to help me along the way. But really to make the mental leap from four homes to overseeing being the managing member of an LLC that controls a 168 unit apartment community, even I, with my unreasonable expectations of myself, um, could not have made that leap unless it was almost forced on me, which it was. And by that, I mean I was looking at 20 to 30 unit apartment buildings in the range of about $1 million, because I thought I could raise well, actually aggressively, I could raise about 200 to 250, $300,000 from people I know, no family members. I don't have a rich uncle, just people I know professionally who are not related to me, who just know how I operate. And after looking at a lot of places actually for about 3-4 months, I still hadn't found the right opportunity. And then my someone on my team reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this apartment community. It's in Cincinnati. It's 168 units. There might be some opportunity here for you." And I was like, "Whoa, that is, I don't know how, like 5 times larger than I had envisioned doing." But then after he showed me that, I on my wall in my bedroom, I keep a goal sheet. After he showed me that, and after I was uh, mentally and emotionally excited about it, I I couldn't go any lower. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't look at the other stuff. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a way for this deal, as long as the numbers make sense, as long as the numbers work. There's a way that I can pull this off. And the deal initially, I thought I needed to raise, I think it was $450,000, and I was like, wow, that's double from what I need, but whatever, I'll just find a way to do it. Then turns out I ended up needing the raise when the dust settled, 1.3 million. And fortunately, I was going. It was like, there was a carrot right out in front of me. I'd get a nibble of the carrot, then it'd be a little bit farther, and every nibble, I had of that carrot, I progressed mentally and on paper with the amount of investors. But if I had initially been presented a deal where I was like, okay, 168 units, 1.3 million, go, I'd be like, no, I don't think so. But it was a step by step process, and now I'm looking at opportunities after this 168 where the 168 doing the same thing doesn't really get me excited. So I'm looking at more of development opportunities on a larger scale.
Exactly. Now, I often have said to people, go as far as you can see. When you get there, then you'll see further. But you had to also make successive decisions, because in each one of those stages, as you said, the carrot kept being moved. And when you recognize that the carrot was moved, that's an opportunity. Some people say, you know what? I don't know where this is going to end or if it's going to end, and I'm afraid it's going to just keep going and I'm never going to get there, so I quit. Why do you think you continued?
Tony Robbins. I mean, it's seriously an emotional roller coaster. Just it is ridiculous the amount of emotional and psychological just up and downs that I had in this. I mean, I left my job. I'm venturing into a new industry. I invest in single family homes, but for I know you know this, Jay, and for everyone else who's invested in single families and also large apartment communities, it's a different type of person you're dealing with, different type of number analysis, all that. So I was learning a new industry, learning a new trade, and I didn't have any money other than the money I'd saved and the cash flow from the homes, which is about a couple $100 a piece. And I'm living in New York City. It was it was very stressful. I also had investors. I had two investors who backed out at the last minute, where
Awesome.
I had to raise over $200,000 in about 2 weeks, right before we were closing. Now I've learned on future deals how to avoid that, and specifically, you avoid that by raising more money than you think you need, and then the people who are in line, you let them know they're in line, they're not in, but should something change with the people who are in, then they can be in. Um, so I know how to avoid that in the future, but I didn't know how to avoid that then. And it was I remember being in a Days Inn hotel in Cincinnati, thinking, "What the heck am I doing here?" My computer had just overheated and broke. I
Nice.
had just had one investor say I need to have an appraisal done, and I was running out of money, and it was just a crazy experience. But I remember thinking, what would a billionaire do right now?
Mm.
And after I thought, what would a billionaire do right now? I was like, you know what? The billionaire would have the long-term vision. The billionaire would find a way to get the appraisal. The billionaire would find a way to position it so that this is an opportunity. And that's what I did. I found a way to get the appraisal. It appraised. We purchased it for 6.35. It appraised for 6.7, 6.7 and change. So that appraisal help solidify all the investments, because my investors were like, oh wow, we've already got going into it, about $400,000 worth of equity. And with that shift in mindset, I mean, I know you're a big proponent of personal development, and I didn't know how important it was until I got into something like this, and I got, I know basically every Tony Robbins quote. I know, Zig Ziglar, all of the Les Brown. I just love that stuff, and I soak it up. And without that, I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at. I wouldn't have closed on the deal. No doubt in my mind, because I needed that type of support. I needed those audio CDs. I needed, I actually have a Tony Robbins life coach who helped me along the way. And I didn't have any money really to pay him, but I found a way to charge it on credit cards, and it turned out to be a really good investment.
Excellent. I think there are so many lessons in the way that this was taken down, and I'm glad that, we get another perspective, because oftentimes what we must do is we worry, did we make the right decision? And I often say, you make a decision and then you work to make it right. And that's a lot of what you've done here, because you will never out earn your personal growth. And so let me ask this question. Think the Joe today, I'm going to guess you would say, is different than the Joe that was working at the advertising agency. What I'd love to know is, what do you think you learned in this process that you could attribute to you having to grow and become a bigger, better version of yourself?
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host, Jay Massey, has some important insights to share with you.
All right, guys, it's been an awesome time so far, just continuing to grow and become something different. You probably figured out already, one of the biggest secrets that you can do is become, like I said, a bigger, better, badder you. That's called personal development, something that you may want to continue to seek out and do in various different forms, because everything that you believe that you currently want is on the other side of the new you that you have not yet to meet. So continue to do that, continue to push forward. And I think you hear that in a lot of the conversations that I have and that we get to hear from all the entrepreneurs is how they were something and they become something else. And you want to put on your superhero outfit. You know how that's going to happen? It's going to happen one book at a time. It's going to happen one investment at a time. It's going to happen one new relationship at a time. I said this over the weekend to some people, and I say it to you. You are one. How many? One relationship away from all of the things that you've been looking for to have happen. Let's get back to the interview.
What have I learned in this process? I would say that it's important to, and this is a Tony Robbins saying, but it's important to, there's an outer world and an inner world, and you can't control the outer world. You can only control the inner world. And I wholeheartedly believe that nothing has meaning until we give it meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever, whatever I'm saying to, your wonderful audience, it doesn't mean anything until each of them decide to interpret it based on what's most applicable to them and based on their life experiences, based on where they're at, based on, if they're watching TV or listening to this or driving or whatever it is. And that's the same approach that I take now and I didn't take before, where I let the outer world influence me more so. I've always been a level-headed kind of guy, but just from a emotional roller coaster where there's a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I've kind of tamed that a lot, where it's just really highs, and the lows can be turned into opportunities. I have just my notes in my phone are just a list of quotes that I come across. And that's the type of stuff that I wasn't doing before that I am now.
Got it. So would you? I too love to collect quotes because you never know when you're going to need one. Share with us, if you would, some of the ones that you find yourself referencing most frequently.
The secret to living is giving. Tony Robbins said that in his TED Talk, where he gave Al Gore a high five. Highly recommend checking that out if anyone hasn't seen that. And then, help enough people get what they want, and you'll get everything that you want, which ties into service to many leads to greatness. And I believe that. Service to many leads to greatness. If, I'm on the alumni advisory board at Texas Tech. I'm going to be teaching a class in Lubbock, Texas on client management. I say yes to everything. I'm on a flag football team, on 3 softball teams. I've got my own business. I'm writing a book. I'm running this 168 unit, or overseeing this 168 unit property, working on my next deal. I'm constantly reading books. So I believe that if I help enough people get what they want, then I'm going to be taken care of, as long as I do it I do it on purpose, as long as I'm doing what is genuine to what I'm supposed to be doing and my interest and what I'm passionate about. And I believe I'm here on this earth to help others achieve financial and professional success. And that's my filter. What I do is filtered through that. And as long as I'm doing that, then I'm going to be all right. So that's why those 3 quotes are most important and resonate most with me. Now, whenever things are going down and it's tough and the problem comes where maybe an investor backs out, then I go back to, a problem isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And once I understand, okay, how can I make an opportunity? How can I make this problem an opportunity? Then I shift my mentality. Tony talks about the first thing he says whenever a problem comes is, "What's great about this?" It's like, what's great about losing $200,000 from investors 2 weeks before your closing. What's great about it? Well, what's great about it is it expands the network. It expands the opportunity for others to get in. And then the second question he asks is, what's not perfect yet? Well, what's not perfect yet is I don't have the money, but here's what I'm going to do to get there. And so it's just a shift in mentality.
Excellent. Totally agreed. So with all of these shifts in mentality, one of the things that I was listening to you, I think what we need to do is that we're going to all have to get together and help you get some sleep, my friend.
I watch documentaries on Donald Trump and Tony Robbins and everyone else, and they don't sleep. 50 Cent? He doesn't sleep. Nobody sleeps. And I do sleep. I mean, jokes aside, I take, I try to wake up as early as possible. So 6:30, 7 a.m., which is incredible. And that's another big shift that I had from my advertising days when I was working for another company. I'd stroll into work at 9:45, 10 a.m. I'd leave at 9:45, 10 p.m. But it was a different type of mentality. But now I'm getting up early. I'm excited about the day. I exercise in the morning, and then I just keep on working just through the night.
No doubt. No doubt. You keep entrepreneur's hours is really what you're saying. Totally understood. So now I guess the next question that comes to mind is, in this transformation, what do you think are some of the basic things someone would need to do first, and in any particular order, to be able to make the similar steps that you've made? How do they get out of their job and then become that entrepreneur, that real estate investor, that syndicator, and it sounds like that soon-to-be author? How do they do that?
I think you've got part A and part B. You got part A, psychology, part B, tactics. I think first you invest in your mind, your education, read as many books as possible from a personal development, psychology standpoint, biographies on people who are successful and how do they operate, what makes them tick, how do they approach business, how do they approach certain and similar situations, from jumping from one industry to another or one venture to another, and learn from them. Secondly, and continually do that. Secondly, from the B standpoint, the tactics, the best advice I can think of is to find those who are successfully doing what you want to do and model after their success. I mean, I had a mentor, and I still do, Peter Harris. He wrote the book Commercial Real Estate Investing for Dummies, and he helped me learn the industry, and he helped me close on this deal. And without having someone who is guiding me through the process, it's very difficult. And I think that's applicable not only if you're going from full-time job to apartments, but full-time job to wholesaling or flipping or whatever. Finding someone who is actively and successfully doing it to help you along the way is the approach I would take. I mean, I hear some people say, I don't want to pay for a mentor. Well, that's fine. Perhaps there's other ways to exchange value with the mentor, but ultimately, there's going to have to be some sort of value exchange taking place in order for both sides to feel like they're making a good use of their time. And it's great to read, but and it's great to participate in blog forums and everything else like that. But ultimately, this business is about relationships. It's all about relationships. We've got two other things I'd say that are important with real estate, in my opinion. Leverage. So how do you leverage? Jay, I know since you've been on my show, I know that you love the leverage aspect of real estate and leveraging equity. Leverage, creativity, because there's always a solution to the problem. For example, the 168 units that was on LoopNet, but it was on LoopNet for a very long time under certain financing conditions. But we approached it differently and creatively, and were able to acquire it. And then the third is relationships. So I think having a one-on-one relationship with someone that you can go to and help walk you through step by step is the number one thing I would recommend from a tactics standpoint.
Got it. Now, you mentioned something that I think and I like that's very interesting to me. You said some people don't want to quote unquote pay for the mentor. And when you say that, I assume you mean, exchanging actual cash or some sort of currency, in exchange for the mentor or mentor's time, etc. But yet there's still an exchange of value, which in my world is still payment. So I'm curious to understand, what would you consider to be some of those other forms of exchange of value that would be able to be worth a mentor's time and attention?
I think it depends on the type of real estate that the two individuals are focused on. Because if it's wholesaling, then you could have someone doing your marketing and being quote unquote a bird dog and finding properties, being the person who is fielding all the phone calls initially, doing all the initial upfront work, and then they would get a cut of the profit after a deal's closed. Fix and flip. I've never done a fix and flip, so I won't even touch that category.
Right.
For apartments, it depends on where the mentor is in his or her career in investing, because perhaps the mentee lives in a market that the mentor wants to start buying in. Then having someone actively going to the courthouse to identify apartment owners who are always being fined for health violations is an incredibly valuable asset, because that apartment owner might be more motivated than other apartment owners who aren't getting fined for health violations to sell. And having someone on the ground who is driving around looking at potential acquisitions, or if you're not in acquisition mode, then if you are but you have properties in that market, then it could be someone who is actively marketing. Perhaps it's 5 Craigslist posts a day plus passing out flyers on doorknobs of competing apartment communities to drive people to your apartment community. I think there are ways to do it, but it depends on ultimately what both of them makes sense for both of them, and it depends on if the mentor already has those systems in place. And if so, then it would just be a monetary exchange. But I think there are ways of adding value in more physical things. It just depends.
Joe, you're not supposed to give away our super secret technique of looking for all those code violations.
Oh, no.
But that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. That's why they listen, for those super secret ninja secrets. Now they know.
There you go.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. So hopefully they were listening and they took notes and they're like, "Ooh, that's a good one." But you've heard me say before, you look for problems, not properties. And Joe just clearly illustrated for you one way to find problems instead of properties. So there you go. With all of this, being the case, Joe, you said in the beginning, you said big time crazy ideas. So I've got to ask, what's next? What's the new big time crazy idea that's stretching you beyond belief, that's more than you could possibly ask or imagine, but you're pursuing anyway?
Well, I will control $1 billion before my 40th birthday, and I am 32 right now. So, and in my mind, I will control $1 billion before my 40th birthday because I will add $1 billion worth of value to the world, both from my investors and also for the residents who live at my apartment communities, and then also, the team members that I have on my team. So specifically, what I'm focused on right now to help me get to that point is development. I've been working on a development deal for the last 4 months, and it's after the dust settles, it's going to be about a little under 400 apartments. It's very, very early in the stage, in the process. But it's it's an off-market deal. It's something that I don't have under contract yet, but we have a rock-solid relationship with the seller, and that's the type of thing that I'm evolving towards. And I don't have development experience, and I recognize that, and I wouldn't raise a penny on a development deal if it was just me. So I brought in another team member who has tremendous amount of development experience, and he's going to be teaming up with me on this, and that's my approach. That's how I will get to my goals, because I always bring in people who have the wealth of experience, and we partner on stuff. Everyone's heard of what's 100% of zero, right? Like zero. And that's my approach because I believe that the more I can partner with people who bring different skill sets to the table that I have, then we're going to be able to do more deals and everyone's going to benefit.
Agreed. So for those that are listening and finding out about you for the first time, and have resonated with the conversation and want to be able to make those leaps, those jumps, etc., how do they find out more about you?
You can go to my website. It's just my name, so super complicated. Joe Fairless, JOE, F as in Frank, AIRLESS.com. And I have a blog there. On the blog, you can check out the podcast where Jay was nice enough to allow me to interview him. It was just a couple weeks ago, so it should be one of the top podcasts on the page. And check out more information on apartment investing and just psychology and all that good stuff.
Excellent. And one last thing, for those that are just now starting to on their journey and putting themselves out there as people who can provide solutions as it relates to providing clean, safe, affordable housing, what would you say to them, that person who's listening, that maybe to the old Joe who is still sitting at the desk and working late nights? What would you say to them today, knowing what you know now?
Well, I would say the first and foremost, before you jump into something full time, you'll need to know your why. And not only why are you doing it, but how will it benefit you? How will it benefit others? So what's the ripple effect? Once you know that, I mean, we as human beings have an amazing capacity to just overcome anything. We can accomplish anything. It's just a matter of how inspired are we and why are we doing it? That's why, whenever a family has a child for the first time and they're not making a lot of money, all of a sudden they're able to provide for another mouth. The child doesn't starve. Why is that? Well, they raise the level of, what they're accomplishing because they have to, and because they have a compelling reason why. And if we can not have life dictate that level raise, but if we can consciously dictate that level raise because we're coming up with compelling reasons why, then that's a recipe for success.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate your investment here, because that last statement, I hope they were listening. That was definitely something of great value. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you so much, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. You've been given lots of hints, no direct action. No one says to go and get commercial real estate investing for dummies, but you probably should. Go over to the website, joefairless.com, because you're going to find additional resources, additional podcasts, and you'll probably meet a few more entrepreneurs that can help you on your journey. It has been fun investing more time here with you guys, and I do enjoy it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to all of you guys again soon. Until next time.